Amy, can you hear us okay?
Are you talking to me, Amy, or Amy Leon? Aloha. Amy Minor checking in.
Thank you, Amy. We can hear you. Tony, could you test your audio for us, please?
Hi, Commissioner Mybom checking in.
Yep, we have you both. Thank you. All right, I'm going to call the City Commission meeting to order. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, good evening. We have a pretty extensive agenda for tonight, so we'll just get everything underway. Al, roll call.
Benson.
Here.
Brunig.
Here.
Johnson.
Present.
Mybom.
Present.
Minor.
Present.
Schramm.
Here.
Weber.
Here.
Villanueva.
Present.
Mayor Moser.
Present.
City Manager Leon.
Here.
City Attorney Denherter.
Here.
All right, you will notice we do have two commissioners this evening that are on the screen. So I have asked them to text me if they have any issues getting through. So if you see me on my phone, it really is commission business. But it gets a little clunky. We got used to being online and then in person, and then putting two commissioners online with what we have on our agenda tonight. I just want to make sure that we give them a chance to speak. With that, I'll need a motion to approve the minutes of the work session of November 22nd and the regular meeting of November 22nd, 2021.
So moved.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on the minutes? Any comment on the minutes from the public? Al, roll call.
We can do voice on this.
Oh, yes, we do. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. And any abstaining? Okay, minutes are approved. Number 3 is a schedule of bills. What is your pleasure?
Move to pay the bills.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on the bills? Anybody in the public want to make a comment on the bills? Al, roll call.
Villanueva,
Aye.
Benson,
Aye.
Brunig,
Aye.
Johnson,
Aye.
Mybom,
Aye.
Minor,
Aye.
Schramm,
Aye.
Weber,
Aye.
Mayor Mosher.
Aye. Motion carries. Number 4, under routine business, is the city manager's report, so I will turn it over to City Manager Leon.
Honorable Mayor, members of the commission, former commissioners, and public, just a few things. I'll try to be quick because I know you have a lot of business tonight, but we got to talk Christmas, and that's serious business. There will be no solid waste collection on Friday, December 24th. That is a Christmas holiday for city staff. So if you are a Thursday or Friday route person, your collection will be on Thursday, December 23rd. All other routes will be collected as scheduled, and the transfer station will have a shortened amount of hours on Friday, December 24th. So the transfer station will be open from 8 a.m. to 1 p.m. They will be closed Saturday, December 25th. We're reminding everybody that the wrapping paper, holiday cards, styrofoam, packing peanuts, all those things are not to be placed in the recycling cart for pickup. Wrapping paper and cards often have glitter, and they're not recyclable. So those need to go in the black can, in the garbage. We thank you for your cooperation. When you're over it, we will have a one-time pickup of live Christmas trees on Monday, January 10th. So we will ask residents that they place their live undecorated trees, so you have to take the Christmas decorations off on your front curb no later than 7 a.m. On Monday, January 10th. There is no live Christmas tree pickup in the alleys. In addition, if you're over it before January 10th, you can drop off your live Christmas tree undecorated at the after-hours waste location, east gate of the transfer station. Live trees can also be taken to the transfer station during regular business hours, Monday through Saturday from 8 a.m. to 3:45 p.m. I tell you this now because our next meeting is the last meeting of the year, if you can believe that. We blinked and 2021 is over. That meeting's going to take place on December 23rd, which is Thursday at noon at City Hall. Our only item for business at that meeting at that time is a public hearing for a alcoholic sale of alcoholic beverages at a special event. I believe it's at the center. I'm just looking for feedback. We can record that meeting and do this with YouTube and all those things. However, it's a little more difficult when we're not using this meeting space. So want to know if that's a priority for you, we'll make it happen. Otherwise, we won't be recording that meeting. That's the only item. I'm not hearing any wild desire to do that. I do know we have a couple commissioners and staff people that will be gone as it's close to the Christmas holiday. I'll have Colleen double check that we'll have a quorum to make sure we're all okay for that and let you all know. The 18th is, I believe, Saturday, and that's our scheduled shopping day for cops, kids, and Christmas. So if you're not familiar with that program, that's where we work with other law enforcement agencies, and Yankton Police Department and other agencies shop with kids in our community who want to buy gifts for family members and others that might not be able to do so otherwise. So it's a good way for them to reach out to the community and a good way for our cops to get to know people in town. So we appreciate that program. I believe that's Officer Jeremy Olson and Brad Parker that coordinate that. So also, patience is asked. We do have 3 of our officers currently attending the Academy in Pier. We have 1 out on maternity leave.
paternity leave, excuse me. We have one out ill, and we have an opening. So anybody wants to grab an application on their way out for the YPD, we would appreciate it. But just your patience, we're certainly taking care of all priorities. But we do have our working a little short-staffed in that and other departments. That's all I want to bring forward, unless there's specific questions, commissioners, you have of me. I'll let you get to your business.
That awkward moment of silence when I try to make sure nobody online wants to say anything. Hearing nothing coming from my fellow commissioners, we'll move on to public appearances. Now is the time for anybody in the public who wants to address the commission on something not on the agenda tonight. Seeing no movement, we'll move on to consent agenda items. Number 1 is consideration of Memorandum 21-243, recommending approval of the renewal of mobile home park licenses for the 2022 licensing period. What is your pleasure?
So moved.
Do you want to do the whole consent agenda together?
Do you want me to do the whole thing together? Okay, perfect. Number 2 is consideration of Memorandum 21-248, recommending approval of the applications for pawnbroker's license for A+ Loan Service, doing business as A1 Pawn. Number 3 under consent agenda is consideration of Memorandum 21-249, recommending approval of the renewal of applications for private collector or reefers license for year 2022. For the 2022 licensing period. Number 4 is renewal of the 2022 city dance license, so consideration of Memorandum 21-250, recommending approval of the renewal of applications for the 2022 city dance licenses. Number 5 is to establish December 23rd, 2021 as the date for a public hearing on the request for a special events malt beverage on-sale retailer's license and a special on-sale wine retailer's license for one day, which is December 31st, 2021 from the Center. Chris Thury, Executive Director, and that is located at 900 Whiting Drive. And number 6 under the consent agenda is to establish January 10th, 2022 as the date for a public hearing on the request for a special events retail on-sale liquor license for one day, January 24th, 2022 from Ben's Brewing, Ben Hanton owner, located at 222 West 3rd Street for an event at the NFAA, which is located at 800 Archery Lane. Now what is your pleasure?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on any of the consent agenda items? Anybody in the public? Al, roll call.
And we can start with voice vote, and we'll go to roll call if there's anybody abstaining or anybody saying nay.
Perfect. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay? And anybody abstaining? All right, consent agenda passes. Moving on to old business. Number 1 is a Memorandum 21-237 supporting Ordinance 1057, the second supplement to the 2021 annual appropriation, Ordinance 1038, and a second reading and public hearing of said ordinance. What is your pleasure?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any commission discussion? Anybody in the public? Al, roll call.
Benson.
Aye.
Brunig.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Mybom.
Aye.
Minor.
Aye.
Schramm.
Aye.
Weber.
Aye.
Villanueva.
Aye.
Mayor Mosher.
Aye, motion carries. I'm bummed to see Jerry's not here tonight, to keep me honest. I had gotten the agenda out of whack a little bit on our media review on Friday, but I'm back on track. So number 2 under old business is consideration of Memorandum 21-247 regarding the public hearing on the SRF application for wastewater improvements. You will see under here there is an A, B, and C in our agenda. A is Resolution 21-104 regarding option 1 to rehabilitate the existing facility in the amount of $44.5 million, or to relocate the existing facility to a new location east of town in the amount of $80 to $90 million, depending on the location. B is Resolution 21-105 regarding the wastewater collection system project in the amount of $7.2 million. And C is Resolution 21-106 regarding water distribution system project in the amount of a little over $8.2 million. There is an A, B, and C on here. I will let the commission know once we get ready to take a motion. We're going to have presentations first. And then once we're ready to make a motion, that will have to be 3 separate motions, A, B, and C. Will have to be done individually. So with that, I would turn it over to City Manager Leon for anything she wants to see, and I see Kyle's up at the podium, so.
He's ready to go. As you know, the purpose of tonight's meeting is to hold a public hearing on the application to the State Water Plan grant program. So we are on the State Water Plan. We put ourselves on that in October. You have to be on that plan before you can make the grant application. So the next step here is conducting a public hearing, and we need to know for what we are applying. So tonight you're going to hear a presentation from Kyle Goodmanson, as well as, I'm sure, Delron Peters from HDR is going to give you some comments as well. They'll answer any questions you have, and we'll also take public comment. One thing I did hand out to you that I received, and I have it over email as well, so I'll make it part of the public record, is a little bit more information about HDR and their team. That was a question that was raised to us over the weekend, so we got you a little more information there. Happy to share that with the public as well. So with that, I'll hand it off to Kyle, who'll give a little overview. Some of this will be repeat for some of you, but for folks in the audience, it might be new. So Kyle, if you want to start your presentation.
Good evening, Commissioners. Honorable Mayor Moser. Again, thank you for your time. Thank you for the public that's here to participate tonight. Again, this is the public hearing for all 3 projects. Like I said, we will need to have separate resolutions for each one. Get it up here. I will also introduce, we do also have Tanner Hansen here, our wastewater plant superintendent, for questions regarding the facility themselves. We have been working on this project on our end. We really started in 2019 following the flood. We started with a condition assessment. We brought HDR in on that. Then it kind of morphed into doing a master plan / facilities plan. We've been working on that for about a year. So again, we're pretty confident with the information we have in terms of making decisions. Again, it is a compressed timeline that kind of puts you guys in a bind. But again, I think the information that we put together is good, quality information. Next slide. First project we'll kind of talk about is the water treatment plant itself. Again, the major driving force on the water treatment plant is really aging infrastructure. Again, the last update we did about a little over 20 years ago now. So really, we're looking at a major equipment replacement. Again, what's really driving the condensed timeline right now is the availability of funding. The current water infrastructure provides for some additional grant funds through the ARPA funding right now. That will help minimize our impacts on rates. So we really want to look at that as an option possibly to take advantage of that funding. Of course, we always, when we go through these facility plans and we look at updating the system, we always look at future regulations and planning for those future regulations. And then we also look at that growing customer base, making sure we have capacity. One of the things we looked at is making sure we have capacity for that potential for regionalization in the future, depending on what the county does. There is just a little bit of what I would call brick and mortar concrete construction that kind of came out of that capacity side, and that's really we came with the grit removal, and it's portion of our plant or portion of our treatment could use to be a little bit bigger, so we're looking at some improvements to our grit removal. We also have some issues with our secondary clarifiers. So we're looking at some new construction of secondary clarifiers. Then in our digester building, we have our digester boilers located inside the building, where we store the digester gas. There's some code issues with that we look at probably moving our boilers outside of that facility in the future. So that's kind of the brick and mortar portion of the project. Next slide. Again, the biggest issue with our facility right now, again, is aging infrastructure. Again, really the last upgrades were in 2000. Most of that equipment has met its lifespan. We do have some older unreliable equipment, some unreliable piping that's even older in that 30 to 57 year range. We talked about the grit removal and lack of capacity there, so we'll be doing some brick and mortar construction there. The large clarifiers on the secondary side, we look at doing some improvements to those and some new clarifiers. And again, the major process equipment replacement and those boilers in the gas storage system. Again, the condensed timeline, really, we're talking about capitalizing on the federal funds. Again, we were basically made aware of the funds 1st of September. We've got our projects in on the state water plan by October 1st, and now we're looking at January 1st deadline for getting these applications in. Those SRF applications will also be used for the grant funding for the rescue plan. When we look at putting together facility plans, one of the things we always have to look at is what is our population growth and what are our trends. So this was kind of just a slide that shows our estimated population growth. And again, we did figure in a number there for that regionalization so that if the county does move forward in the future, that we have the capacity to take on that additional loading. When we looked at alternatives, again, the main alternatives really come in the wastewater treatment treatment plant itself. We did look at basically construction of a new facility at a new location and retrofitting and expanding our existing facility. You can see the smaller circle is where our existing facility is. The larger circle is kind of that general area where we looked at where we would go if we were to relocate the facility. Of course, we haven't acquired any land, so we did do kind of that desktop environmental analysis and cultural analysis that was required. But if we were going to move to that location, we would probably have to do some additional environmental and cultural assessments and probably a siting study to determine where that location would be. Again, when you look at new construction, the advantages does free up the Riverside property that we're on currently. I would add, though, that we do have to remember there's some major pipelines, Trans-Canada pipeline through that Paddlewell Point area. We also have our collector well in that area and the raw water lines coming back from there. So it frees it up, but not completely. We would also have to have a major lift station in that same area of our existing facility. Least complexity, much easier project. There's no doubt about that. You get to build a new facility, run the old facility till the new one's up and running, and then just switch over. If money was an issue, that would definitely be the way I'd want to go. The drawbacks, again, is really the capital cost. It's an $88 million project. Maybe less than that, depending on the location. Again, there's some variability in that estimate right now based on not knowing the location. Land acquisition easements. One of the things we've talked about, we have a 2026 deadline for spending our ARPA funds, getting land acquired, easements in place, and getting this project completed, I shouldn't say completed, but the funds spent by December of 2026 is going to be a really, really tough timeline. The other thing that's came out of the funding is the state DNR said they probably would not fund the additional cost of the relocation. In terms of the existing facility, again, it's a much lower capital cost. We do have some site constraints and limited expandability. The one thing we have looked at with that, though, is we're comfortable at our facility for another 40 to 50 years. So that expandability is out there quite a ways yet. And again, we're comfortable with the structures, the structural analysis of the buildings, We're comfortable if there's enough capacity probably for another 40 to 50 years. So there is some constraints long-term, but they're out there a long ways yet. One of the things we did add here is a phase 2, you'll see for 10 million. We'll talk a little bit about that more, but it has to do with some future nutrient removals. Next slide. So again, basically the only thing on this side is really, as staff, we have recommended the expanding at the existing facility. Again, it really comes down to the economics and the cost of moving and not being comfortable with going that far into debt in the wastewater fund. Again, when we look at this, phase 1 at the existing facility would be the new grit removal, new secondary clarifiers that you can see in red. New UV equipment would be one of the major costs of it. Another big major cost would be improvements to the digester system, the digester buildings, and then again, replacement of outdated equipment in virtually every building and every process. Phase 2 is what we call nutrient removal. Originally, we had this in the project. The state has made a decision that they're not going to fund any of the nutrient removal at this time. They think it's probably 10 to 15 years out. So at this time, based on the fact that technology might change in the future and how they treat that might change, the state is basically having everybody hold off on those portions of the project. So we will have a project, in that 10 to 15 year window where we'll have to do some improvements. It has some anoxic basins and some mixed liquor pump station, things like that you can see in the green portion of this map. So we just wanted to make sure that everyone was aware that, this isn't the end of this. No matter where we go, and this is for both projects, that we would have this additional project 10 to 15 years out. Next project is really the wastewater collection system project. Again, one of the things we've looked at for many years is the East Highway 50 extension. One thing I will mention here, when they talk using the Clean Water Fund for sewer collection, they will pay for the installation of sewer mains and non-developed areas. On the drinking water side, they will not do that for water distribution. It has to be an existing development and basically a replacement. On the clean water side, they will pay for new installation of sanitary sewer interceptor lines. So a couple of these projects we picked out, the East Highway 50 extension would be an extension of our existing sewer. The HSC soccer complex, again, would be addition to our sewer to get some sewer lines out in that area, both at the complex and the area to the west of the complex there. We also have the Highway 50 replacement of the Martin Creek crossing. We've had several issues where we've had to repair that crossing. It will repair currently the structure that holds that pipe up is being eroded underneath and needs to be replaced. So it'll be a complete replacement of the line and the structure that holds it up. We have the Hasting lift station replacement. That's a small lift station that's out near the Parker Hannafin area out there. The 8th Street Burley to Furtick project. That's a project looking at how we can reroute some of that sewer on Burley and Furtick for potentially in the future to open up some development for Simples. That's got quite a bit we need to look at yet moving forward with that, but that's kind of looking at that, some adjustments to our sewer on 8th Street. Next slide. West St. Louis Road, 8th to 9th Street. This would be looking at some of the sewer manholes we have in that area, and this would likely be the area for a connection in the future for the Yankton County area, the lake area, if they ever did move forward with their sewer projects. Another big one in here is what we call the East Yankton Thrive property. This was put together actually by some engineers that were using it for the working with Thrive. This would actually also kind of help sewer that whole east side, not only the Thrive property, but some of our current facilities on the east side of town where we're going to have issues getting that property or getting that sewered with our current sewer system. So it'd be basically the addition of a major interceptor line all the way up to Whiting Drive coming off of Highway 50. Estimated project cost is about $7.2 million. Again, based on what we're hearing in funding, we're assuming we'd get a 30% grant on that project. So that would bring our share of the cost down to approximately $5.4 million. back one they're doing. On the water distribution side, again, we have 22 water main replacement projects involved in the grant, or in the application. They were mostly, they were the water main project listed in our capital improvement, 5-year capital improvement plan. We also have a water meter upgrade. This project will be looking at replacing any water meters in our system that are 17 years and older. We'd also be moving to a fixed-based system. We'd have 3 fixed-based towers. And rather than have to send staff out and read meters, they'd be able to read basically right from the computer at City Hall. So we'd have instantaneous reads instead of sending our staff out to get reads and going back and reporting those numbers. The staff and finance would be able to read them directly from City Hall. And then we have an elevated tower rehabilitation. We've got a little work to do on this project yet. That's why we have such a wide cost range in there. It's been about 15 years since our towers were coated and painted. We've already had failures of the coating on the west tower on the outside. So this will require for us to do an inspection, which is actually planned as part of our distribution modeling and master planning that we're working on. So once we get through with that investigation and do a good overview of what we have there, we estimated $350,000 to paint just the inside of the elevated towers, roughly $900,000 if we have to do additional work on the outside. So that number will adjust based on what we find in that investigation. Total project cost is estimated about $8.2 million. Again, with 30% grant, we're about $5.74 million for our share. When we look at all these projects, we have to, as part of the facility plan, we have to look at our environmental and cultural impacts. HDR put this together and sent out letters to these different agencies. And we take measures to limit our impacts to wetlands, parks, public facilities, air, water quality, threatened and endangered species, and cultural resources. At this time, we have found no adverse impacts on the cultural environmental resources. Again, if we do that relocation, we would have a little bit more work to do on that environmental assessment for relocation, knowing that we don't know where that location would be yet. We also may have a little bit more work to do on some of the collection system side, and that's one of the reasons we want to make sure that you do all 3 resolutions separate, so that if we have to come back and do an additional public hearing because we get some, we do find some cultural and environmental impacts, we'll have to do an additional public hearing. So we want that public hearing to be on just that application, not all 3. So that's kind of where we're at with environmental compliance. Funding, again, this is kind of what's driving the condensed timeline that we're at right now. State received roughly $600 million in water and infrastructure funding through the American Rescue Plan. One of the proposed items in it right now is that they would match our local ARPA funds. Again, these are all proposed and will have to be approved by legislation before it goes into effect. But with that, we received about $2.6 million in our local ARPA funds. They would match that, giving us a total of $5.2 million. They're talking a minimum of a 30% grant on the remainder part of the projects. There is some potential for additional grant funds through principal forgiveness. We had a discussion today with the South Dakota DENR, asking what we thought that number could potentially be. I asked if it would be 10%, and they said I was shooting high. So based on the rates that we're looking at and where we're thinking, we're probably thinking at the most will be an additional 5%. That 30% is really pretty close to where we're going to be, we think. Again, things can always change, but that's, as of today, that's still kind of where we're seeing that. And the comment was also made again that they most likely would not put any grant funds towards the cost of a relocation. So, again, we'll continue to look for additional funds either through principal forgiveness or any other grants that the state may come out with. Kind of looking at the funding continuing and kind of where our numbers come and where we kind of get to our rates. Again, if we look at that wastewater plant expansion at the current facility, we're about a $44.5 million estimate. Subtract that $5.2 million for our local and for our local match. Gets the project down to our cost being about 39.3. 30% of that is about 11.8 million. Again, subtract 11.8, 5.2, you get down to Our share of the project would be about 27.5 million. Again, on the collection side, if you subtract the 30%, which is about 2.16 million, you get down to that 5.4 million. So we end up with a total project cost on the wastewater side between the wastewater treatment facility and the collection system at about 32.5 million. So, again, that would be our cost that we would have to cover. Right now, these are the terms we have based on the information we have. Rates right now on a 20-year loan are approximately 2%, and 30-year loan are probably approximately 2.125%. Based on our project at the wastewater treatment facility being basically equipment replacement, they will not allow us to do a 30-year loan on that project. So it would be a 20-year loan at 2%. So when you look at how is this going to affect our rates, our current wastewater rate is about $45.22 for an average customer that uses 5,000 gallons. On the water side, our water rate is approximately $59. When we look at the water distribution, that project, that 5.74, that will be our responsibility. We do have a little bit of coverage in our current rates, and we also have the potential of some projects, SRF loans being paid off. So we think the need for additional rates on water will be very small, if any at all. There may be a small increase, but it won't be a substantial increase. Again, we have to work through those numbers a little bit better and check with the DA&R in terms of getting those current SRF loans we have paid off. On the wastewater side, we'll see a substantial rate increase. If we wouldn't get any principal forgiveness or any additional grant funds, it'd be about a $51.7 million project, which would be almost $100 for a 5,000 gallon customer. At the 30% principal forgiveness, again, we get that project cost down to about $32.5 million. That gets it down to about a 73% increase for that average 5,000 gallon customer. If we do the additional $43 million for relocation, again, that $43 million will be all loan, and that adds an additional cost. So now you're looking at about 147% increase, or going up to about $112 for your average household customer with about, again, that 5,000 gallon per month usage. So, either way, it's a pretty substantial impact to the rates. And with that, we'll open up for commission discussion. Again, it is a public hearing, so the public will have an opportunity to comment. Thank you.
Okay, trying to think of how to best tackle this. I guess I'll start with commissioners and questions that you would have for Kyle or.
Kyle, if we did nothing today, in how many years will we be having to make these improvements anyhow, equating close to that 44 million?
So originally, we were really hoping to get this EDA project that should get bid out this spring. Our original plan was to kind of get through that EDA project, through that construction, and follow it up with having this discussion. So I would say we're probably 2 years, 3 years tops, we'll be having the same discussion. And the one thing I would emphasize is, again, I think the information we have, it was the timeline for you guys getting the information was condensed. Again, we've been working at this for over a year. So we're confident in our numbers, we're confident in our decisions. So whether we make that decision today, 2 months from now, 2-3 years from now, the information that's in front of you today is probably not going to change much. So.
One more question. In regards to funding, when's the last time we saw a funding opportunity like this?
Talking before my time, I throw that out, but the early 70s as part of the Clean Water Act was probably the last time we've seen this kind of funding. We haven't seen it since then, and I'm not sure we'll see it again anytime soon.
So the question, Kyle, the last time you were in, and thank you for your presentation, by the way, well done. You had mentioned that if we stay where we're at with the current facility, that I thought I heard you say that the buildings that are there now, the infrastructure that are now buildings, will only be good for the equipment will be like 20 to 25 years, and I thought you said the buildings would still be the current ones 20 to 25 years. Are you saying that is not the case?
Okay, so regardless of what we do, you're probably gonna have another project in that 20 to 25-year window to replace equipment, whether you stay where you're at or you move. You know, in that time frame, you start to hit, based on our environment that we're in, you're gonna see some of that need for equipment. Structurally, the buildings, I would say we have a minimum of 20 to 25 years. I really think you're probably in that 40 to 50-year window. And that's based on the structural analysis that HDR has done in that condition assessment. Again, there's always going to be some repair, maintenance, potentially a new roof, but the major portion of the structures are going to be good, you know, for another 40 years.
I was told at one point that there was possibility of probably 15% efficiency if we were to move to a new facility. Will we actually gain some of those same efficiencies, though, in our current facility with the new technology?
So we got this question proposed to us on Friday, and I reached out to HDR, and we had conversations Friday, and then we had some more conversations on it today. You know, based on the amount of equipment we're replacing at our current facility, we don't see a really big increase in efficiency by moving. On top of that, if we move, we're going to have a major lift station and pump a large percentage of our sewage to that facility. So the increases we do see in efficiency at a new facility, we're going to lose a lot of that in the cost of pumping with a new lift station and maintaining a new lift station. So, you know, we're probably close to a 5% to 10% gain in efficiency at the most. Did I say that right? Yes, sir. Okay.
You had mentioned that there is a pipeline at the existing facility and also some new pump that we'd have to have, some other things that would, excuse me, that'd be in the way. Could you elaborate on, if we moved, what would all have to remain there at the facility that we are currently at?
So in that 80 to 90 million, we basically put in there moving everything from the wastewater facility, demolition of all the buildings, moving the wastewater lagoons that are on Paddle Point to that new facility. That did not include removing lime lagoons, is that correct? We did not include removing lime lagoons or doing anything with the street department's stuff. It also included the installation of a new lift station at that facility, whether it was at the location of the existing wastewater plant or maybe just a little bit to the north, but somewhere in that general area, we'll have to have a major lift station. And again, that force main will have to get, depending on where we would locate, where we would get easements, we'd have to get that force main then all the way out to the new facility. Currently, there's an existing pipeline on the west side of the facility, basically on the west fence line of the facility. And then there's also two pipelines on Paddle Point. And one of those pipelines on Paddle Point is the Trans-Canada pipeline, which is a major pipeline and very limited on what you can build over top. I don't think they'd even let you build a softball field over top it. So you'd have to work around that, which cuts right through the middle of Paddle Point. So, and then we also have our collector well on Paddle Point and a raw water line coming back through that, kind of that corner of the Paddle Point area.
About approximately how many acres is that current site?
I think we figured the plant facility itself, or the current facility, is about 5 acres. And then the lagoon area, I think we figured was about 7 acres. And of course, there's some additional property there around
So
the Paddle Point.
15 acres or less,
Yeah.
or fewer. What percentage, if you had to ballpark, would we not be able to use based on the stuff that would have to stay active at the current facility?
I would say you're probably going to lose close to 50% of that. By the time you look at where pipelines existing infrastructure, and things like that, you're probably going to lose 50% of it. And that might be a little strong, 40 to 50% of it.
So we may be able to gain 6, 7 acres, 8 acres of.
Yeah, I think you're going to be
usable space.
limited. I mean, I think you would have a really hard time with a major infrastructure style type building
Okay.
in any of those locations.
Kyle, on the map you provided showing where the wastewater treatment plant was, and then you had that big circle of where potentially you think, or HDR or whoever in looking at this, thinks it would make sense to move. Does the city own any of that land, or where you're proposing it would have to be
It would have-
negotiated or taken?
We would have to either purchase the property or condemn the property. And there's a good possibility that you would be looking at a condemnation. And again, you would also have to get easements to get to that facility, then easements from that facility back to the Missouri River.
So none of that land in that circle is the city's currently?
No. I would say for getting the force main out to the facility, we do have that Highway 50 corridor that potentially could be a little bit easier location to get that pipe out there. But again, you're still working within the Highway 50 corridor then, which is tight.
This would be a question for Ross more on, if we did have to go the route of condemnation or eminent domain, what legal timeline is that? I mean, we're already pushed up on a 2026 deadline. How long would the legal side just to acquire the property roughly take?
Well, there is a quick take procedure that you could use to speed it up, but how long did it take us to get through the Highway 52 corridor projects? Do you remember? It's at least 2 years-ish.
And I'd just like to point out for the listening public that by condemning, it's still a purchase. It's just that you're going through court to come up with the final price. Either way, we're going to be purchasing, so.
Kyle, if we're looking at the current site and maybe things we could do around there to use the property differently, the lime pits, for example, could those be moved to a different location and not have too much of an inconvenience for what you're doing?
They can be moved. Of course, we pump from the water plant to those lime lagoons, so anytime you relocate them, you got to pump it farther, increase energy costs. Again, we did not figure that into that $80 to $90 million price tag, but the assumption would be if we're going to move the wastewater plant, we're going to have to look at moving those two for it to make sense. With money, anything's possible.
We have that trail that goes around the wastewater treatment plant, and there's a pretty big chunk of land to the east of it. Is there any reason we couldn't open that up and use it more if we wanted to?
We've looked at that. You mean, I gotta think, east of, part of the case, so you're getting into this, yes, we have looked at that. The problem is it just doesn't, that area really doesn't fit in the current hydraulic flow through the system. So when we look at where we would end up putting anoxic zones and secondary clarifiers, they kind of got to fit in that footprint that we have there.
There's no reason we couldn't use that we couldn't clean it up more for recreational use or something like that?
Some of that area Adam does utilize though for storage of materials and equipment and things, so.
I'm just going to interject because Todd Larson's not here tonight, and he would tell you, yes, we can utilize that for recreation. We would request more resources to take care of the property if the commission should so choose to do that.
It could be a primitive trail, maybe.
You're welcome, Todd, if you're listening.
And then, Martin Creek runs through there. It's pretty overgrown, I think. And, as part of this project, would there be benefit in cleaning up that part of the creek? And I assume that's part of the other engineering study we're doing of Martin Creek related to the aftermath of the flooding.
I would caution as part of this project so that you don't have environmental impacts and potentially putting that 30% funding at risk. I would stay away from doing anything like that as part of this project, if that makes sense. Just when you get into environmental impacts and dealing with that, I would stay away from that as part of this project, just to keep our funding as clean as possible.
Do we know definitively that we couldn't apply for moving the facility to see if we could get a 30% fund match on that?
So, never say never, is how I would start that. Following I think it was November 22nd, we did the PowerPoint presentation. I received an email from Andy Burles at the DANR saying that he thought we did a good job of conveying DANR's concerns and stance on that. We talked to Andy again today, just to kind of confirm that. And we basically point blank asked him, he says, there most likely would not be any ARPA funds for the cost of relocation, that it would be loan only. And they're really concerned about whether we would get any ARPA funds going that route, just because they don't feel we can really hit that timeline for that project without having land already purchased, getting those rates in place for that size of project. So at this time, I would say it's a very small chance.
If we applied for it, saying that we were applying for both, not knowing quite exactly what it is that there's a public appetite for, and gathering information, because of the compressed time frame, what are the chances of us missing out on the 30% for the 44 million?
There is that potential that if we go in and we don't look like we're prepared and have a project ready, and other cities or other projects are ready, and the funding becomes an issue, that we may not be a priority. I don't see that as an issue. I think the 30% on the 44.5 million, if we can get the project done in time, is fairly secure. Again, the bigger concern that we kind of got from DA&R today was that, do you really have a project that you can, in terms of relocation, meet that 2026 deadline? Again, is it possible? Yes. Is it going to be a really tight timeline? Yes, and I would say we probably need to make that decision tonight so that we can get moving forward with that land acquisition, site studies, easements, and things like that. Get those environmental assessments done, get that information in so that come March, we have that stuff put together for that funding. Again, it'd be a really, really tight timeline. Is it impossible? No. But it would definitely be making some decisions now and moving forward at a rapid speed with those decisions as we go forward.
Okay, so I'm not sure if this is even a possibility, but if we applied for the 44.5 million, in that process, if the right opportunity presented itself and the community was showing a lot of interest in moving the location, is it possible to use those funds towards the new location? Because most of what's in that 44.5 are items that would still be going into a new location.
I honestly think that would probably be what we kind of talked about, DNR would be a better way of moving forward, again, if that's the direction we want to go. Again, and I understand why, because you don't have that, maybe as much public input as you want, but you're moving that decision down the road a couple months, and again, the facts aren't going to change. What we would probably look at, or what I would recommend, is applying for the 44.5, getting as much ARPA funds as we could get secured, coming back in March and amending that application at that time for additional 43 million for the relocation. But again, I would stress, if that's really the direction we want to go, I'm not sure you want to wait till March to make that decision and move forward, because that's how tight the timeline's going to be. I know that's not what you want to hear, but again, that's,
No, I just didn't know what that looked like.
yeah,
You would be right, and that's not what I want to hear.
yeah.
It's just, it's really tough to be making decisions on this in a tight timeframe like this. I mean, we're getting, this is the minimum public input that we can, it's a $40 million project, and we're going with basically the bare minimum that we're obligated to. It makes it tough. Makes it tough on our end to make the decision. It makes it tough from the public end to feel like they have input. I wish we could have some more time. I also understand that we're dealing with funds, and we're trying to get them for the community. I just worry, at what expense to the community do we get the funds? Are we selling the public input for the amount of money that we're able to get in grant monies? Is a concern that I have.
Kyle, you touched on the residential increase, both approaches would take as far as residential user. My understanding is residential rates and commercial rates or industrial rates are different. It's not equally divided among all the users of the system. And so how would this, either one, I mean, what are we looking at for an increase to some of our largest users in the system?
You want to take that one out, or you want?
If I could, at the current time, the way wastewater is set up, everybody in the system pays the same minimum. And everybody pays the same consumption. So if you use 1,000 gallons, you have an 11, I believe it's 22 for a surcharge, and $6.80 for your consumption. If you're simples, you still pay $11.22 for a minimum and $6.30 per 1,000 gallons based on however many thousands you use. So again, just the way it's currently set up. Now, I will tell you that my recommendation, and I believe what's going to come out of DANR, is to approve a funding package like this, we're going to be required to have a surcharge, period. That's what we went through when we went through the big loan process for our water treatment facility and well. And there's been no indication or no direction from the state yet, but it's because they're all on the same thing too. I got to believe that it's going to be a surcharge. So when we talk about the estimated surcharge, there's been no other information yet, no other figuring about how to apply that throughout the system. The $33 that's shown so far would be if you took every user and split it out evenly times the 12 months. But again, that's also a commission that you as a decision that you as a commission will have to decide. And you've not been presented anything yet, nor have I given you a spreadsheet yet, because I haven't had the time to put all that together yet. Plus, I need some direction from you guys. I will give you different options, but the $33 that we're talking about right now is based on if it was kept exactly the same and evenly throughout the system. That's not the recommendation yet. That's just to try and give the citizens an idea of what the costs are. All I can really tell you for a fact is that for the retrofit and the collection alone, I have to have $2,089,000 more per year in revenue. And if we go to a new location, I need $4,600,000 more in revenue. How you spread that will be a decision you'll all have to make.
And Commissioner Schramm, under public comment, I have some letters that were submitted by some folks who, many of whom comprise some of the higher users. I don't think they speak specifically about the rate, but they speak specifically about impact of increasing rate, so that might give you some idea. But, you know, our larger users, some of whom, you know, may share their usage rate, you know, can be 40 to 75,000 per month in wastewater. So when you think about that, that does have an impact on those folks' abilities too.
I guess my thought was, this is going to have an impact on everyone equally across the board, proportionally. I mean, it's the same, right? So that, as of right now.
It's going to be, I don't know how to qualify the equally, but it's going to be an impact, obviously. And how much of an impact will be after you people decide how you're going to spread it. But again, the fact of an impact is 2.89 or 2.089 million more to do a retrofit and the collection at the same site, and an additional 2 million. The total is, I think, 4.6 million.
I do have that on the last slide if you want
Yeah.
to see it. If you can read it, I think there was one more slide after the questions that kind of shows a,
4.2 million.
yeah.
I found my little sheet. So again, the fact that I can give you for sure is that the debt service for the retrofit and the collection would be an additional 2.089 million in revenue that we need annually. And if we went to a new location, based on the estimates, it would be a grand total of 4.225 million. That's the only fact I can give you at the moment. How you spread that is a decision you'll have to make later.
Al, while you're answering questions, can you talk for the public about what impact this would have on our borrowing capacity?
Right now, the South Dakota Constitution talks about the minimum, or I mean, the maximum a community can borrow is 5% of the assessed value from the previous year. And then there's another clause in the Constitution that allows an additional 10% for water, sewer, and other projects. And other projects won't apply here at all. So again, it's an additional 10%. As of unaudited figures, at the end of 2021, we have an additional capacity of approximately 97 million. So if we're borrowing 80-some million, I got to believe that we'll be able to. Plus, by the time we're fully borrowed, it's going to be another 4 to 6 years. And you get an increased debt limit for each year for the growth in assessed value. Plus, we'll be reducing what we currently owe by 4 to 5 more years, 4 to 6 more years of debt service. So again, like I mentioned at the last meeting, I don't think there's going to be a question that we'll have the capacity yet to borrow. How we spread that would be depending on the state's interpretation, but we'll have the capacity. What we won't have is less debt in total. I mean, you're going to borrow a lot more, and it's either going to be 40-some million or 90-some million. But again, I think capacity is not a concern. They'll be a way.
And as we're talking money, no matter what we decide tonight and end up borrowing, what happens if either one of these projects is not done by 2026? What does that look like? Do we just not get funds? I think I've asked this before. It's not paid up front, and then we do the other part of it. Is it, how does that work, and what does that look like?
I think the way I read it is we would have to give some of those funds back, potentially. So.
And I won't speak for Al, but when we talk about borrowing capacity, just because we have the capacity isn't something I necessarily recommend that we borrow. So I always try to look at the city money like I look at my own money, and I think there's things we have to have, and so we get them. And we should have some nice things too, because we want to enjoy all of our labors, but we also shouldn't, overextend, and we should be clear that, if we would have an event or events like we saw in some parts of the country this week, we need to be able to feel secure that we can recover or at least be put into position. So you can't, go if and but and what if this and what if a meteor hits us. I mean, I realize that as well. Just because we have the capacity doesn't mean we would recommend borrowing. Again, I won't speak for Al. For me, I do not recommend borrowing that great amount in one enterprise fund for one project if there's a way to meet the need, borrowing less. That's my personal recommendation to you. But I'm not a finance person, but but I think that's just good advice.
So I'd like to think we all agree that it would be fiscally prudent to trying to capture the up to 30% grant money, and rather than do nothing. I think that's pretty obvious, considering the timeline that Kyle suggested that we have left on the existing facility, and we don't want to know what happens if that fails.
You don't want to keep Tanner in a kayak?
No. But, the thing that keeps coming back in my mind is is moving the facility, is that a $40 million value that we'd gain by having a limited development potential of 7 acres down by Riverside Park? And to me, 7 acres, 7, 8 acres, whatever it's going to be that we can actually develop after we move is not going to equal $40+ million. I just don't see that as a prudent financial decision on our part at this time. I would love to see a new facility. I think it'd be cool to open up some things at the river, but I just don't see it. 7, 8 acres, it's not going to cut it. That doesn't equal $40 million in development potential over the next 20, 30, 40 years of that site. So in my mind, that's, I think, the most prudent financial decision is to stay where you are and make the changes and hopefully capture some of that federal money that's out there.
I want to give Commissioners Minor and Mybom a chance to ask questions before we open it up to the public. So Commissioner Minor and Commissioner Mybom, do either one of you have questions?
I'm enjoying listening. I don't have any specific questions to ask.
Hey, Kyle, you had mentioned, and I will say that I hadn't necessarily gotten my hopes up that it would be a high percentage over this added principal forgiveness, but you mentioned when you ballparked to the gentleman that would we be looking at an additional 10%, and then you kind of came to this idea of just 5%. I will just say that that's legitimately disappointing to me. It seems like a very low number. And again, I didn't get my hopes up, but it seems unfairly low. I'm just trying to wrap my head around what kind of criteria that he's using to at least give you that guesstimate of only 5%.
So when they look at that score, they have a scoring system, and when they look at that, and the problem is we're competing against the smaller communities, and we have to show a hardship, and we really can't compete with those smaller communities. So even if we do have that rate up in that $75, that just doesn't tip the needle that far in our favor when comparing us to those smaller cities and the hardship they show with their rates. That was pretty much the comment and what was said today. And like I said, I threw out 10%, and he that's not going to be that much. So it potentially might not be any principal forgiveness.
I think too, Commissioner Mybom, this is Amy, the amount of projects that are being proposed in the state, I don't have the exact numbers in front of me, but we heard last week in Pierre that I think there's, Kyle, do you happen to know how many million?
So originally there was about $3.2 billion worth of projects went into the state water plan, and that's been reduced to about just under $2 billion. Worth of projects now. And we asked that question today, is that really going to free up any money? And those projects that came off, a lot of those projects were projects that when they put their proposed funding together that they kind of knew were going to come off that list at 30% grant. So again, right now we're not seeing a lot of hope for additional funding.
So, I mean, I just say that in light of knowing they'll try to spread those funds out and try to fund as many projects and as many water systems and wastewater systems as they can to have as much impact with the dollars that they can.
Kyle, another question. When Commissioner Johnson was speaking, he talked about the damage from the flooding along that area. Is there anything being done? A lot of the issues that we have there now with some of the sinkholes and the shifting was because of the flooding, correct?
Correct. And what we saw is we had failures in the pipe that caused those sinkholes. So
Right.
Again, when we did our condition assessment and we looked at the structures, we're confident the structures themselves have not moved. It was the pipes failing, and once you got those pipe separations and allowed material to flow into the pipe, that's what caused the sinkhole with the high water table. But again, structurally, we're confident with the buildings that are there. There might be some roof replacement we do on a couple of the buildings, I think, but again, in terms of footings and the structural components of the buildings, we're confident with that they're solid and will be there for another 20 to 40 years.
Okay, and so if we do, and I hope we don't ever have another flood like we had, if we do this remodel in the current place we're at, if we have some type of flooding, is there, I know you don't have a crystal ball, but do you foresee any issues, kind of the same issues that we're having, that we had?
So
previously?
part of what we're looking at with that EDA project is replacing some of those pipes that have failed and some of those things. So a lot of those, where we had issues, will be taken care of either with the EDA project or with this SRF project.
Right, and that's
If we move forward with that.
Specifically talking about the pipes that have moved, which caused the sinkholes, but the flooding was the issue that caused the pipes to move and that created the leak and then the sinkholes. Is there, again, I realize that I don't know what you do for shoring or some type of, to try and keep the ground from moving as much as it did. Is there any engineering way to do that? Just to make sure that if we spend.
I'm gonna let the engineering expert.
Yeah, if we spend this
There
money
is.
in that spot, that we have some type of insurance policy, so to speak, to help mitigate that.
Right, that's a good question. So,
Sorry, Delron, will you introduce yourself too?
I'm
just 'cause-
Delron Peters with HDR. Answering the question, I would say that the pipe that we're replacing, we're using a different pipe type with restraining joints and fiberglass piping that will last longer in that atmosphere. So that's what's being done to rectify that situation, is both restraining that pipe and changing the pipe types that were used for that piping.
Okay, and one more quick question. So if we stay there during this remodel, are we doing what we can to be as green as possible in that and to recoup any, and I know Kyle, it was a great tour that I took out there, and I realized, if I remember correctly, burning some of the methane for the heaters, we had talked about that. Part of the issue with that, though, is it's very caustic. I know that creates other issues for you, but with new technology, is there anything that can be done during this remodel that could help us recoup some dollars or just be more efficient?
Yep, certainly. So what we looked at for this size of facility, and what I should say we typically do with this size of facility, is use the methane gas to heat water and use the boiler heat to heat the other facilities around them. So expending that additional methane to heat the buildings next to it. We did do an evaluation to determine if we could do other things with that gas, and there's just not enough for a payback on that type of thing. But nowadays, we do have much higher efficiency pumping and pumping systems that we're installing at this plant too, so.
One more quick one. So Commissioner Benson asked you that if we applied for the remodel and we were awarded those funds, we would be able to potentially, if we decided, which I'm not saying we will, but you're saying that we could potentially roll that into a move if that were the case?
Yes. Again, by not applying for all the funds right now, we wouldn't be leaving that door open for that 30% match. But again, at this time, with the funds that are out there, we're most likely not getting that anyway. What I would suggest is to turn around and apply for those additional funds in March. If there is some funding that's still available, then potentially we would get that at that time. But again, right now, they don't see a lot of potential for additional funds being available. But yes, we could amend it and move forward then.
Kyle, how confident, and I guess Adam maybe would have to answer this too. I keep going back to not having that shovel-ready site, which, could push us back anywhere a year to 2 years in construction. Where does that put us even with construction companies who then probably could potentially be hired by other communities to do their work that was awarded? And you know what I'm saying? Like, I know it's hard, anybody doing construction right now, to get anything done. There's just so many jobs out there. I guess I don't know realistically how many types of construction companies can even handle a project of this magnitude that would potentially be available. Is there an idea there as you're looking, not only in South Dakota, but in the region?
Yeah, that's a concern when you talk about $2 billion worth of water and wastewater projects going out, and a lot of them being plant-type construction, lift station-type construction. There is a limited amount of contractors that really specialize in that work. That would be one thing that we would really strive for, is to get our project designed and out to bid as soon as possible to get a contractor on board. We've even talked about the potential of maybe looking at a CMAR-type project, so we could get a contractor on board sooner. So that's definitely a concern. But either way, that's going to be a concern, I believe, so.
So either route, we'd still have the same concern of what might be
I think we're going to have the same
available?
concerns either route. Same with materials right now, either route. Materials are an issue right now. We've had some discussion with some of our other industries in town that are going through major projects that getting materials, project costs, all those things there's some unknowns right now. We have a 25% contingency in these estimates right now, so fingers crossed that that's enough.
So what does, walk us through a timeline. So you talk about how quickly we could get a bid out, and what does that timeline look like? Because we know we're on the clock, it's 2021, it switches to 2022, which basically gives us 4 years. So how does that 4 years break down in both scenarios?
So the first thing we'd be doing after this was we would be moving forward with requests for qualifications and requests for proposals for getting an engineer on board to do the design. We would probably start that process right after the first of the year, so that come March, when the funds are awarded, we could also at that same time have our engineers selected and start moving forward with the process. Roughly, I would say a year in design.
9 months to a year.
9 months to a year of design, and that's probably the same for either location.
That's correct.
About the same for either location. The real hangup would be is that how long would it take to acquire the land and to get everything moving forward with getting the other thing we'd be looking at is probably fairly soon wanting to get some rates in place to secure that award in March. We'll have to be able to show that we can get those rates in place before we can be fully awarded the application, the grant.
And is timeline of construction basically the same too? So if this gets awarded and we find a construction company, whether we build or renovate, is it about the same timeline?
I
Or
would
does
say
one
probably
take?
about the same timeline.
I guess that way, and the new construction is probably gonna take a little longer just because of the amount of concrete that would have to be poured, whereas this is a lot of equipment replacement with current concrete in place. But certainly, I believe it's a tighter timeline for the remote site, the new site, than it is for the existing.
And we're still concerned about both timelines. Either way, it's gonna be tight.
Could you explain the CMAR? You had mentioned that. Could you just give a layman's term explanation of that?
Yeah, here in Yankton, I don't think we've done a CMAR project. Typically what we do is we design it, we bid it out, and build it. Kind of through a CMAR project, it's a construction manager at risk. You bring your engineer on board, you get to probably close to 60% design, somewhere in there. And at that point, you go out and you acquire your contractor through a similar process of qualifications. Then from that point on, your engineer and contractor work together, and they bring in a guaranteed price at some point too, right? I better just turn this over.
Yeah, so a CMAR would give you the opportunity to have a contractor to come on early, likely before 60%, to have input into the project, also help with cost estimating and give you, really the advantage for these projects in these tough times are that they will give you a guaranteed maximum price of the project. Certainly, what happens at times is you have to cut back on the project or adjust your project in order to meet that number. But that's the advantage of having a contractor on early. Mainly get that guaranteed maximum price in these tough estimating times. But certainly, it also adds to being able to have a contractor on board early before there isn't any contractors available. So there is that advantage also. So.
And are we confident that we can get a contractor to go along the, because for the most part, a lot of it has to do with change orders, correct? Change orders, because we're looking at retrofitting an existing facility, there's a lot of, there are variables. So it's a protection somewhat it would be a protection somewhat on our end, but the contractor's looking to protect themselves on their end also.
Yeah, I think that's that's certainly a separate issue. Change orders on an existing job and on existing buildings can be more of an issue because it's not that cost to the project. So a change condition is a change condition either way. But you certainly, the advantage of a CMAR is they will go out to subcontractors earlier in the process and get pricing earlier in the process. And then you can know, oh, wait a minute, we're $10 million over or $5 million under, and kind of get those numbers earlier from the subcontractors.
I think
Anyway.
the response to your other question is, yes, we are worried about getting a contractor. But South Dakota communities, we're not just competing with South Dakota communities, so everybody's got free money. So, our water plant contractor was from Fargo, and, I don't know, I think we did have a lot of local subs, which we would hope to have in this instance as well, but there, as Kyle said, there's not a lot of contractors who do that kind of work, and then we're competing against neighboring states that probably have higher wages and some other advantages and maybe some economies of scale with multiple projects close together. Our best hope is maybe if a contractor can pick up a couple of South Dakota projects and time them together, I think. So there's some economy of scale there, but that's going to be a concern on this project, on road projects, on bridge projects, even local projects where we're just trying to get some repairs done on.
C could potentially be something that may be worse than you thought and potentially cause a change order after the fact, or during the construction process once it's actually started.
There's always those fears, like you said, in a remodel and a retrofit. But I'm pretty confident between Tanner and his staff and the condition assessment that we went through that we did dial in quite a few of those things that we wanted to look at, like our aeration well, we took that out of service and went in there and looked at that. But there is some underground piping that, you always kind of be concerned, some of that we didn't plan on replacing, that once we get it exposed, we may have to. But for the most part, I'm pretty confident that we've got sufficient funds in there to address all the things we need to address.
Other commission questions, discussion before I open it up to the public? I won't ask for a motion until we give the public a chance to speak. Either way, Tanner needs to keep his kayak for a while, I think is the moral of the story. All right, we are going to open it up for public comment. Due to the nature of the commission meeting, I am going to ask that you try to keep your comments to about 3 minutes. We'll be a little lenient that way. There's not as many people here as we thought might be here, but just to kind of keep things moving along and to make sure we get everybody in, and that way if the commission also does have questions for anybody that's speaking from the public, they have time to do that. Yes, it looks like we'll have an orderly progression. At least I see one individual standing. I will ask that you introduce yourself and state your address as we ask all guests who address the commission. Jim, I'll start with you.
My name is Jim Means. I live at 701 West Riverside Drive. And I will be very brief. I've talked to all of you, so I think you've all heard what my feelings are. But just in the final thing I'd like to say is that I think that to renovate the old sewer treatment plant is probably the most expedient thing to do, the easiest decision. But I think if any of you think that the growth of our community would be enhanced by increasing our riverfront, I think it's the wrong decision. I think there's so many questions unanswered. Al brought up tonight, not even sure how the rates are going to be spread out. Questions of talked to Al and group of city staff the other day, and I was very surprised to hear that our actually sewer rates are fairly high right now compared to other Class A cities. They're in the upper half, maybe closer to the top of the upper half than the bottom of the upper half now, and we're 20 years from doing a major project. We're right on the river. We don't have to pipe sewage into the river. Most of our sewage comes, most of it comes gravity flow, and we're still sitting at a high rate, and I wonder why and what we're doing, and we're going back to that same way of doing it. That's a question. There are many questions. I'm not going to try to go through all of them. I've mentioned others to you. But I really want you to think carefully about this. And 30% off of a chunk of it is certainly nice to look at, and it's something good. But we have no idea what opportunities will come along. They've got a third less than a third of the proposals have dropped off since what they thought was going to come in. This money is going to come back, at least probably half of it is going to come back because it's loans. The federal stimulus is going to come in, and I think I've seen numbers that for water and sewer issues, there's going to be, over the next years, someplace between 350 and 400 million coming to South Dakota just for water and septic proposals. And the one thing I'd mention on the 7 acres that Mason mentioned, there's 7 acres there where the sewer treatment plant sits, where I think the opening up to the river is not those 7 acres, is having the sewer treatment plant off the river, and which I think will open up other property around it and make other property all around it more valuable. It's not just that 7 acres that I would like to see the city free up for other investment and so forth. It's everything around it, from 2nd Street to the river and east. There's many more acres than 7 acres that are under consideration. So with that, I'll leave it to you, and I know it's a tough decision. This is a tough one. You get plenty of them that are easy. You had a consent agenda that was pretty easy, and you get plenty of that. This is a tough one, and think to the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Next. Pauline, go ahead.
Pauline Ackland, 2607 Abbott Drive, and 3 minutes is not going to cover my 4 pages of questions. Just kidding. Honorable Mayor, City Manager Leon, and the Commission, my concern is that we have researched the availability of, have you researched the availability of parts, materials that are needed for this project and the increased cost potential. I work in manufacturing, and our freight increases our freight has doubled. Our parts some of them have tripled in cost. I'm just concerned that the pieces that you're putting into this, have you budgeted for those increase? Because in 4 years, who knows where we'll be at. So that's one of my concerns. The other is we have on our water bill a sewer minimum. So if you're going to put an assessment on there or a surcharge, does that go away? That would be for Al.
For the water, nothing's changing yet.
No,
This
for
is
the
all
sewer.
wastewater.
Yeah, the wastewater.
Yeah,
But
wastewater-
there's a sewer minimum of 1122.
Wastewater, the minimum is not going to be, it's going to be a surcharge.
Okay, so that will
I'm
change.
assuming, again. So the minimum will change, but what'll happen with the minimum is we still have currently 4,360,000 in annual revenues. That includes the minimum and the consumption. The consumption is going to change because that 4,360,000 still has to remain. All I'm looking at on the forecast is the additional revenue that we need just to pay for this debt service.
So on the sewage side, then we're going to pay, say, $35 plus the assessment.
Plus the consumption charges.
Well,
Correct.
but the surcharge.
Yeah, the surcharges, it's not a minimum anymore. It'll be a surcharge.
It'll be a surcharge.
Yep, plus the
But what I'm asking
consumption.
is that 1122, does that get added into that?
It's not
Or is
added
it
in.
part of it?
It's the $35 that's proposed would be the only surcharge.
Okay,
But the current minimum, you have to reflect that in consumption to make sure you still have the current revenues of 4.3 million.
Okay. And he doesn't count on my 3 minutes. Okay. Phew. Okay, so if it doesn't get completed by 2026, then we then get added to our surcharge to pay that off? Because if that's the case, then I'm moving.
The only way the surcharge will change is if, once we do our spreadsheet and 4 years down the road, we end up having to borrow more, absolutely the surcharge will be more. This is just a projected, just like it was with water. I'll do my best to be very conservative on the beginning numbers and not assume any growth. So I don't think it'll be a big surprise, but I've got 4 years of unknowns that come up.
Okay.
I can answer your first question since it doesn't count towards your time. We do have contingency planned into the budget with all construction prices and equipment prices. They're planning that with the estimates that they're doing. But as you can appreciate, I mean, you tell me, I mean, everything's changing in price really fast and it's unpredictable. So we don't have any more of a crystal ball than any of our manufacturers do. We're going to try to plan for those costs. Some people say they're going to go down. I haven't seen anything go down too much yet, but that's possible. But I don't think so. But, you know, we can't make a promise that something isn't going to be increased, but we are planning for things to be priced higher than they are today, because that's the trend we're seeing. We're reading, you know, concrete 20% increase at least. That's just one example. That's a big dollar amount on such a big project, either route.
Okay, and then on the 9 months to design it, so if this passes, and you're spending 9 months to design it, when does that surcharge go into effect? Immediately? Before it's even designed? Or do you wait until that design is done?
Again, I relate back to, that's a commission that has to decide these things, but I will present it much like I did the water, where it's probably a 4-year step increase. So we know what our projected surcharge is going to be based on the first initial estimates and stuff. I'll propose that 1/4 of that is the first year. By the second year, it's up to a half. By the third year, it's up to 3/4. By the fourth year, you're at full surcharge. But I can tell you that I can't promise that there won't be any change at the end of 4 years. It all depends on the next 4 years of pricing. The borrowing won't change. The debt limit we need is set by a DANR on their estimates right now. And once you lock that in, that's a given. So the $2,089,000 extra in debt service for the retrofit and the collection, and the $4,200,000 if we move to a new location, that won't change. What'll change is if that's not enough to do all the projects, then we have to borrow more. And if we have to borrow more, obviously the debt service goes up.
Okay, one more. Am I still under 3 minutes?
Yeah.
Okay, so on the plans that you're going to vote on, A, B, and C, okay, do all 3 of those have to be done? Or is there something on the B and C that could be dropped off and done at a later date? And is everything lumped into that 44 million?
Kyle, do you want to address that? Maybe Kyle, after this one, you want to go to the other mic.
I'll be done in 1 minute.
So, again, the 3 separate projects really are not related. There is some small, like I said, we talked about like the elevated towers where we have 350,000 to 900,000. But again, all those projects that are listed in that water one are projects that we were really in our CIP and we planned on doing. Some of the wastewater collection ones are projects where we look at doing new water or sewer lines into some areas that are not developed. We could always look at not doing those. We kind of picked out those projects to do based on, they've been on our list of projects we wanted to do in the past. And with 30% grant, we thought they'd be good ones to move forward with.
Is that all under the same funding, though? The same,
So that is separate from the 44.5. So it's
Okay.
44 point, the
Okay.
first proposal will be 44.5 for the wastewater treatment facility. The second one is the 7.2 for the collection, and the third and final is the 8.2 for distribution.
So we will be looking for 3 separate motions. My understanding is we may be eligible for grant and on those B and C as well.
Right, those
That
were
same rate, because they are separate
30%.
projects. And they are projects that we need to do also. We just want to take this opportunity again because it's before us.
okay, thank you, Kyle. And then one last comment, just to add a little humor to all of this stress. Are we competing to be as high as what my cable bill is? You know, just ask.
How many channels do you have?
Not very many.
Only if you have HBO and show both.
I do not. I have the bare minimum, and it's still almost, well, my water bill is getting almost as high as my cable bill. So just.
But you
had to
can
lighten
live
the-
without cable. You can't live without Kyle's water.
Thank you.
Thanks, Pauline. Anybody else from the public want to address the commission? I got somebody coming up.
Nick Harkis from Simples, address 1000 Cattle Drive here in Yankton. I guess, I'm listening, I think you've got a very difficult decision to make. When I hear about the water rates, or the wastewater rates, and the amount of money that you're looking at spending, I can see that, it's gonna come to a time where you don't wanna allocate straight across the board as you always have. Or maybe you do. I mean, that's a decision that you'll have to make. When we look at it, we looked at it, excuse me, we looked at it the same way, if rates stayed across the board the way that they are now. The economic impact to our plant was considerable. We pay almost $1 million a year right now in only wastewater to process cattle here. The rate increases that we're talking about would, at 73%, would add $1 million, $730,000 a year. So at a new facility, it's unbelievable for us. Now, our operation is market-based. If we were making custom cabinetry, and the wood prices went up, we'd raise the cost of our cabinets up to match the amount of our inputs. But in the market that we're in, we have to compete in an open market on our raw material side, and we have to compete in an open market on our finished goods side. And so we're stuck with trying to be the lowest cost producer. And this significantly strangles our operation in almost every scenario. So, I guess the least amount of money that we can spend to do infrastructure operations in the city, both from a water perspective and a wastewater perspective, I guess that's what we'd like to see, and if you can stretch that over time instead of, and I understand the opportunity with the grant money. It's a very good opportunity. But it's also a very big cost increase in a very short amount of time. And so that makes us, nervous about the future of our industry here in town. I don't know, Kevin, do you have anything else that he might be able to eloquate it a little bit further?
Yeah, hi, I'm Kevin Fairchild from American Foods Group, in behalf of Simple Meats. I'll say that, first of all, we'd rather pay the cable bill, so, okay. So Nick hit on some key points. I do want to say that I appreciate the transparency on talking about the concerns for the wastewater here and the needs for, to be sustainable going forward. And also the due diligence on looking at grants and opportunities to cover that cost. Because, on our end, we were trying to make calls of ourselves with connections to see what other ways that we could maybe reach out and trying to find additional funding for this too, because we are certainly concerned about our sustainability with Simple's Meats. You know, if you look back in the last couple of years, our plants have had to absorb some very additional costs that were not expected a couple of years ago. And with the market challenges and stuff that Nick mentioned, we are in a tight spot. So the concerns of Simple Meats here in Yankton continue to be sustainable is a very big concern, and this is a very big concern to us. You know, we have a lot of employees and a lot of people that take pride in that business there, and we certainly want to see it prosper. And we want to see Yankton prosper too. But it is a very big concern, and I think it's important that we voice that tonight.
Thank you. Nancy? Okay.
Hi, Nancy Winandy, 1205 Peyton Lane. And I want to thank you as commissioners, mayor, and staff for taking a look at this. Having solid infrastructure in our community really matters, whether it be water, wastewater. Those things make a difference as we take a look at what businesses can come to Yankton, how we retain our citizens. So I just wanted to touch on 3 different topics after talking to several people in the community over the last several weeks. And I just cannot come up with some really good reasons to justify the additional cost for moving the facility. I agree with you, Mason, that it's going to be hard to recover $44 million out of that 7 acres. I can tell you in the almost 4 years since I've been doing this job, no one has come forward to even ask about river development. No one has come forward looking to develop the Gurney property or other locations near the river. It would be fantastic if they came forward to do so, but coming forward with $44 million just seems incredibly unrealistic. We want to keep our rates as affordable as possible so we can keep people like Pauline here and bring in a younger generation to start filling some of those workforce needs. We need to make sure we are attractive to other businesses as they are looking to locate here in South Dakota instead of other states. The Trans-Canada Pipeline makes a lot of that area undevelopable. That infrastructure in the ground down there at your existing facility is not going to change. And so developing around that, we've looked at that at some of the other properties that Thrive owns, and developing around that existing infrastructure just makes it really, really difficult for large-scale projects. My second point that I wanted to summarize is partnerships matter. We haven't really talked a lot about the county here tonight, but I do want to mention that that is a significant partnership that can help spread the cost of what the surcharges or other things might be on the bills, but there is not enough time for us to pull that together right now. That is something we need to take a look at and talk about probably for 5 to 10 years. But we can't hold up the progress here in the city as we wait for the county to get on the state water plan, to set up their districts, to figure out what they're going to do. I think long-term that is a viable partnership that we need to consider, but right now is not the time to hold up the progressive nature of what we're doing here in the community for that. And lastly, I want to say trust. I am not a wastewater professional, but I do trust the people that we have representing us as staff, as other professionals who are giving us direction and recommendations on how best to serve our city, our businesses, and our citizens. That's really important for us to consider. The recommendations that have come forward for years have been solid recommendations and have set this community up for success, and there's no reason for us to even question at a lot of depth that they're not being straightforward with us on the best path forward. So I know that they have studied this. I know a lot of you have had some really good questions, and I commend you for taking this project on. I know it's scary to make these big decisions this quickly, but delaying the decision is probably not going to give you a lot more community feedback. You all know the community feedback will come when they get their first bill after the surcharge is passed, and then they're going to question, well, where did this come from? That's how it works. A lot of people aren't going to become involved as much as we would like them to, but I thank you for your time, and I hope that you consider doing the rehabilitation project in the existing location.
Thank you, Nancy. Anybody else from the public? Otherwise, I've asked City Manager Leone, in full transparency, to read, we received 4 letters from companies, so I have asked her to read those for the public.
The first one came from Dr. Wayne Kindle. So he sent this to the full City Commission, so it is a matter of public record. Dear City Commission, I wanted to take a moment to provide some input into the wastewater facility. You have another big decision to make, and I'm sure you have heard from both sides. My perspective is coming from the school as a significant user. The cost difference between new and updating the current infrastructure is nearly double from what I have read, with both having an anticipated life function of approximately 20 years. Both would impact our costs as a user and perhaps double the cost if a new facility were built. The cost to the school would eventually get passed on to the community through school taxes, especially if a new facility were built, as I am not sure we could absorb those costs with current revenue, thus costing families and businesses the hike for their home/businesses, and then additional costs through school taxes if needed, especially when considering costs of building a new facility. I believe in progress and understand the need to update the facility as we must have a functional sewage plant. I would ask that you please consider updating the current infrastructure over building a new facility. Thank you for the opportunity to share with you, and always appreciate the great collaboration we've had over the last several years. Make it a great day! Explanation point. Dr. Kindle. He signs all of his emails that way. This is from Sean Brock. He's with Parker Hannafin. Good afternoon. I'm traveling out of state and therefore am unable to attend the meeting tonight, but I understand one of the topics of discussion is the future of the city wastewater facility and wanted to weigh in from a perspective of a local factory. In order to ensure the safety and efficacy of local infrastructure, I fully expect and understand the investments in upgrades and significant repairs that are required from time to time, and I expect, as an industrial user of wastewater treatment system, I expect to bear a portion of those incremental costs of those investments. I would, however, like to ask that the scope and cost of those investments be minimized as much as possible to ensure the reliability and performance of the system. There are already significant business challenges that local businesses are navigating, and minimizing the headwinds to the community drivers of economic growth needs to continue to be a priority. Thank you for your time. Please let me know if you have any questions. Sean Brock, Operations Manager. Next one is from David Losey, General Manager at Aztec. City Commission, I am writing you on behalf of Aztec, Yankton site. We support the plan to rehabilitate the current facility and bring it up to proper condition. Between the costs and the assistance we will get from the state, we feel this is the best plan. Thanks and have a wonderful day, David Losey. Last one that I have is from Mr. Doug Ekron from Avera Sacred Heart. Dear Commissioners, I know you are facing a challenging decision on the water treatment plant, particularly with the accelerated timeline to access federal funds to help offset the cost of development. I recognize that the cost of infrastructure is challenging from a capital and operational perspective. Avera is a major user of water due to our size and scope of services in Yankton. I understand that whichever path you choose, users of wastewater system, Avera included, will face higher rates. However, I want you to know I am supportive option of refurbishing the existing plant with an estimated cost of $44 million. I don't believe the cost of relocating the entire operation, which results in higher costs that will be passed on to users, is justified. I know there's also discussion of a possible sewer district in the lake area and the desire for the county and the city to work together on a long-term option. I believe those discussions should continue, but we should not lose the potential of millions of dollars of federal support on the hopes that collective arrangement with Yankton County could be achieved. Thank you for taking the time to read this and for your service to Yankton. Doug. Those are all the formal public comments that were submitted through the City Commission website or email. Thank you.
Okay, I don't know if others have comments, questions. I do know, Nancy, I will share some of the thoughts that you had crossed my mind, and that is one, in truly looking at a collaborative plan with the county. I'm even thinking a collaborative plan for that whole district downtown, not just wastewater, but as we've mentioned before, you move wastewater, we still have the street shop there. Is there potential down the road if we get more creative on where we move things and what we want to use spaces for later on in our agenda is the potential to purchase land through Yankton Thrive that is also down in that area, and does it bode well to get more of a comprehensive plan put in place. I do know the other struggle. We have former commissioners sitting in here who have toiled with this project in the past. I think no matter what is decided, Yankton's not done talking about where they're going to put wastewater anytime soon. But those are just kind of some thoughts I had. I feel, obviously, I feel bad. I know Kyle and Amy have apologized many times, saying how sorry they are that this timeline had to be expedited, but that was out of their control as well. But also, I want to thank the city staff with understanding that short timeline for putting all the work in getting lots of people's questions answered and presenting this information. Does the commission, any commissioners have any other questions? Kyle, anything you want to share? Amy? Otherwise, we will start with letter A, and I would ask for a motion.
I will start. Well, first of all, I'll make that motion that we go with the $44.5 million renovation plan. But I just also want to add, if you roll the tape, every time this project has come up during my time on the commission, I've been one to say, man, I hope we can move the wastewater treatment plant someday. And, up until a few months ago, we thought this was something a decision we'd make years from now, but it's not. And as leaders, we just have to be able to respond to the circumstances we are put in the best we can. And, looking back to 2019, we were putting in an unfortunate situation. We had to deal with the flooding and the work we've had to do to recover from that. Well, in a way, it's turned out to be fortuitous in the sense that we've begun these studies to look at what work needs to be done on the wastewater treatment plant. So we are in a better position than we would have been to now access federal funds. And it feels very uncomfortable making this type of huge decision on a short timeline. But on the other hand, as Kyle explained tonight, this is a once-in-a-lifetime funding opportunity. These kinds of funds for wastewater and water projects do not come along. So on the other hand, it's a real opportunity for the community to cut down on the amount of money that will come out of just our limited pockets, and we'll be drawing from a larger pool. So in that way, I think we're fortunate, and I just cannot, as much as I would like to see the plant moved, I cannot make a responsible argument for waiting to make this decision or continuing to look for the new site. So that's why I'm supporting the $44.5 million option. Thank you.
We have a motion to support Resolution 21-104 regarding option 1 to rehabilitate the existing facility in the amount of $44.5 million. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. Any further commission discussion?
I would just like to say really quickly, I want to thank everybody that's here tonight. This is an extremely important decision that's going to affect the city for many years to come. We value your input. I wish there was more of it at this point, But again, thank you for being here, and thank you for everybody out there listening and that sent letters in to give us their input. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, well said, Commissioner Villanueva. I do appreciate everybody's input, the calls, the texts, the letters, the conversations. I realize we haven't voted yet, but it is very impactful. It's a big decision for our community. But if this goes through, what I would say to people I'm sitting up here with at this side of the table and those sitting in the community that will be elected to serve in the future, to please keep this discussion going. I do think there are things we can look at doing by putting a comprehensive plan together, working with the county once they have their study done, and seeing where does it best fit in future years. So I don't think this conversation dies tonight, but maybe sparks other conversations of where we go with that entire area in the future. I would encourage that if this does go through tonight. Other comments from the commissioners? Commissioner Maibaum, Commissioner Minor, any comments from you before we take a vote?
None for me.
Commissioner Maibaum here, sorry. Just the quick heads up though, to Nancy's point and Mayor Mosier, you hit on it as well. So the city and the county, we do have a planning group that has met periodically over the years, and that has not been the case for this last year. So the group will be meeting here again on a regular basis, and I certainly do expect that conversations that branch off of decisions that are made here tonight will be had in those types of settings. So again, it's an informal gathering of city commissioners and county leaders and staff from both. And so it's one of those things that I wish was more consistent this last year, leading up to having to make a decision like this here tonight. That wasn't the case, but it will be the case again here going forward. Myself and Mayor Mosier are part of that committee, and look forward to having more conversations with county leaders in the months ahead.
Anybody else in the commission? There is a motion on the floor from the commission. We've taken commission comments. Are there any other final comments from the public? Seeing no movement, Al, roll call.
Brunig.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Maibaum.
Aye.
Minor.
Aye.
Schramm.
Aye.
Weber.
Aye.
Villanueva.
Aye.
Benson.
Aye.
Mayor Mosier.
Aye. Motion carries on Section A. Section B is a Resolution 21-105 regarding a wastewater collection system project in the amount of $7.2 million. What is your pleasure?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second on the wastewater collection system project and submitting an application for that. Any further discussion from the commission? Would anybody in the public like to address the commission? Seeing no movement, Al, roll call on Part B.
Johnson.
Aye.
Maibaum.
Aye.
Minor.
Aye.
Schramm.
Aye.
Weber.
Aye.
Villanueva.
Aye.
Benson.
Aye.
Brunig.
Aye.
Mayor Mosier.
Aye. Motion carries. The third part to this, to old business number 2 is Section C, Resolution 21-106, regarding water distribution system project in the amount of $8.202 million, and that is putting in an application for said funds.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any commission discussion on this agenda item? Anybody in the public? Roll call.
Before roll call, I just want to comment, we didn't really have a whole lot of discussion about how this is going to affect water rates. We're just closing out the whole process of a collector well and a brand-new water treatment plant. The analysis is the surcharge won't have to go up. Quite honestly, we've got a slight surplus there. My recommendation is not going to be to change that. It'll just be added in. It can't be spent on anything other than principal. So there's just not enough of a slush fund, so to speak, in the current surcharge rate. How do we pay for the 8.2 million? We do have currently 4 other loans in water, and we do have the funds on hand to pay those loans off. That will free up other debt service money to take care of this. The reason it's not a proposal yet is because in order to pay off the 4 loans early, you have to get permission. In the past, that was not real probable because of pressures from communities that have led up to a few years ago. They do pretty much side with you now. So all you have to do is show them a good plan of why you're paying these off early. Our plan will be so that we don't have to increase rates merely to sit on extra funds waiting to pay under the normal debt service. So again, that's just a kind of an explanation on why we haven't really touched on any rate increases for water, even though we're applying for 8.2 million. We don't think we'll have to, with permission to pay off early on 1 through 4. Any questions on that at all?
Thanks for clarifying that, Al. Questions on that? Okay. Any discussion from the public after hearing what Al shared? Roll call.
Mybom.
Aye.
Minor.
Aye.
Schramm.
Aye.
Weber.
Aye.
Villanueva.
Aye.
Benson.
Aye.
Brunig.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Mayor Moser.
Aye. Motion carries. Again, my thanks to the public for your comment. These decisions that involve big projects like this are never easy. And again, our thanks to the city staff for working with such a condensed timeline to be able to pull this information together and get it presented to us. And I guess now it's time to get to work and start filling out applications for grant funding. No vacation for Kyle. Okay. All right, moving on to new business. Number 1 is consideration of Memorandum 21-252, recommending approval of Resolution -21-102, the purchase of property from Yankton Thrive. Said property is located at 605 East 2nd Street. This is in the amount of $107,575.36, which is a combination of the land and also payment for platting and other transaction costs. This location, obviously, as we just talked about, is close to the street shop and the wastewater treatment plant. What is your pleasure?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Dave, I see you at the mic. Anything to share with the commission and the public on this?
Nothing really in addition to what's in the memo. It's just a piece of property that's kind of been on the radar for a lot of years, and we're thankful that Yankton Thrive was able to step in a timeline that we couldn't meet as government to get the acquisition, assist with the acquisition, and this is simply the secondary transfer to the city from Yankton Thrive.
Thanks, Dave. Any commission discussion? Sorry, awkward pregnant pause to check and make sure nobody online needed to. All right. We have a motion and a second. No commission discussion. Anybody from the public? Al, roll call.
Minor.
Aye.
Schramm.
Aye.
Weber.
Aye.
Villanueva.
Aye.
Benson.
Aye.
Brunig.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Mybom.
Aye.
Mayor Mosher.
Aye, motion carries. Number 2 under new business is consideration of Memorandum 21-251 of a request to provide city-owned property north of 31st Street at the intersection of Shirley Bridge Avenue for the purpose of transfer to Lewis and Clark Behavioral Health Services. This is 4.77 acres to assist with a $17 million project. Maybe I will ask Dave to lead us in, and I know Dr. Tom Stanage is here. Let's go through that before we get to motions. It's going to be similar here as we had with wastewater. It will need 3 separate motions, so I do want those presentations done ahead of time so we're better informed when we go to vote. Dave?
So I'll let Dr. Stanich describe their project, which is extremely exciting for the community to have the opportunity to have a project or an investment of that nature being considered for Yankton and the provision of those services. The 3 actions that would be associated with this for the City Commission to consider, action letter A would simply be authorizing the mayor to sign an owner's certificate. This is a different type of action than you usually take when you see a plat. Because you're the owner of this property, we have to have an action that authorizes the mayor to sign the owner's certificate. The plat is then eligible for administrative approval, which, if you remember how the ordinance change went a few months ago, allows me to sign that part of the certificate. Action letter B authorizes the city manager to execute the purchase agreement. In other words, the sale to Yankton Thrive for subsequent transfer to Lewis and Clark Behavioral Health Services. Any action either to acquire or liquidate a piece of property requires a supermajority of the commission for approval. Action letter C authorizes the mayor to sign a letter of support for Lewis and Clark Behavioral Health Services. That is not, does not involve funding or land related types of considerations. It is simply a letter of support for them to use as they attempt to acquire funding from other sources.
I'll ask Dr. Stanage to come forward and if you could, for the commission and for the public, I know we've had conversations already, but this is, I think, an exciting opportunity for the region. So if you could walk us through that.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners and City Manager. Before I start, I just want to point out and thank Dave Mingo for his support over the last probably 3 or 4 months, Dave, that we've been working on this. But I'm here tonight with what I think is good news. My board, the Lewis and Clark Behavioral Health Services Board, has made the decision to proceed with the development of a new behavioral health facility. The new facility would be located on property north of 31st Street. It's property that we own there that is next to city-owned property. The projected cost of the new facility is $17 million. The really good news for the city is that the new facility will have a crisis care receiving center and residential crisis care capacity. It really will truly transform behavioral health crisis care in Yankton and the surrounding area. There's many, many, many moving parts yet, and it's not a done deal. That we need $6 million in grant support for the crisis care portion of the facility. It will require $7 million in a USDA community facilities loan program, and it also requires 350 additional feet adjacent to the land that we currently own. Lewis and Clark Behavioral Health Services is asking for your support in 2 ways. Lewis and Clark is asking the city to donate that 350 feet, it's about 4.77 acres there, I think you have in the packet the value. I think Dave has put a value of about $30,000 an acre on that land. Secondly, we're asking for your support, or a letter of support from the city for our USDA Rural Development loan application. You have details in your packet. I'm here to answer any questions that you might have.
Dr. Stanage, you talked about how this is a transformational project. Can you talk about some of the elements of this that will be great for, I guess, patients, law enforcement, caregivers?
Yeah, certainly. That a large part of what we're trying to do is really transform the crisis care space in terms of behavioral health care space that we provide. And a big part of that is being able to have a receiving center where individuals who are in crisis can come, where law enforcement can come with those individuals, where you can have a turnaround time of maybe in minutes, 10, 15 minutes. Right now, all of us, in many instances in behavioral health crises, law enforcement may be involved up to 10 hours just waiting for a disposition for somebody. We've struggled for the past number of years for inpatient bed days, and part of that is that there's just no local options for residential crisis care. So we would expand that. The other part of it would be to have a detox option locally, or more beds for a detox option locally. So just, having that availability for family, for law enforcement, for individuals in the community who are experiencing behavioral health crises. And it's timely. I just looked at our statistics for November, and we had 88 crisis contacts in November. We typically run probably 500 or 600 crisis contacts a year. We do, about a one certification evaluation a day, a little under 360 crisis evaluations a day that involves a petition where somebody is alleged to be a danger to themselves or others because of a mental illness. So it's a huge area. It's increasing in need, and we're trying to meet that need.
Did you also state, I believe that you said this kind of centrally locates everything for you from the various locations? Did I understand that correctly?
It is, and I think you know that we operate out of, we have our crisis beds right now at the Benedictine Center. We have an inpatient unit there. We have our main offices at 1028 Walnut. And so there's just a lot of issues regarding safety. We sometimes have to transport individuals across town. That in ideal world we wouldn't have to do that. So yeah, just really, it's really important for us to be able to bring our services together.
What kind of potential job growth potential are we looking at with the new operation?
Dave was pushing me on that, and I think I answered him by, I can't remember the exact numbers I used, Dave, but we've had, since I've been at Lewis and Clark Behavioral Health, we've grown from a staff of 24 to, I think our last payroll was 165. And so you're talking about job growth of about 5 jobs a year. I can't promise you that we're going to, continue that job growth year after year, but on the other hand, I don't see it slowing down. So.
I believe I used the words when we talked, fortunately and unfortunately. This opportunity arises because of, we're fortunate that we have this opportunity to do something like this, and unfortunately, it's a big need, and something that's going to be good for our community to offer.
As a mental health provider, I'm just really excited about this project. It's going to be so good for us.
Yes.
In terms of filling a local need, with some of the crisis care, are you going to have a secure facility there by chance? So if we get for instance, a court order, law enforcement a lot of times will have me help out with a chemical dependency crisis, I guess they call them IVCs, or involuntary chemical dependency commitment. but there's not a secure facility where you can put someone awaiting a bed to be available in an inpatient setting. Do you guys anticipate having some secure beds available? So if they wanted to leave, they couldn't because they're there on a court order?
Yeah, and that's a tough issue. We take people right now who are on mental illness holds and who are on alcohol and drug involuntary commitments, and secure up to a point. But when somebody becomes violent, that's when we really depend on law enforcement, and we need that support. But certainly we do have the ability to keep people involuntarily. So.
Dr. Stanich, thank you for doing what you do in regards to mental health. We appreciate everything that you do. Can you speak to, this is going to be, again, a regional center, correct? And can you kind of talk about the service area for the center?
Right. So Lewis and Clark Behavioral Health Services' primary service area is the 7 counties in southeastern South Dakota. So Yankton, Clay, Union, Charles Mix, Bonhomme, Hutchinson, and Douglas. However, there are some of our services that are statewide. Our substance use treatment program really serves a much wider area and actually touches a large part of the state. And then our crisis care services will probably focus really on the southeastern and south central part of the state. So in that way, it's regional, but it kind of depends on exactly what services you're talking about. About half of the people we serve are from Yankton County. The other half are from the other 6 counties that we serve.
Commissioners Minor or Mybom, any thoughts, questions here?
Commissioner Minor, just incredibly grateful for the work that you do, Dr. Stanich, and excited for the opportunity for you to increase impact in our community. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Dr. Stanich. Commissioner Mybom, I was wondering if you could maybe elaborate a little bit on your relationship with Avera. You mentioned your presence there at the Benedictine Center. I go back to, I believe as part of the Affordable Care Act, Avera as a nonprofit hospital, they put out a community needs assessment every couple years, and the last one was in 2019. And one of the #1 things that they uncovered as part of the last community health needs assessment was the availability of mental health services. And so obviously the relationship that they have with you and the other folks at Lewis and Clark Behavioral Health seems to make sense with that in mind. With the new facility, how do you see your partnership with Avera playing out going forward?
Well, yeah, I think I can answer that in a couple ways. Is that, currently right now our presence at the Benedictine Center is through a lease agreement with Avera Sacred Heart. So that is through a lease. However, we work very closely with Avera Sacred Heart in a number of different ways. The primary interaction is through the emergency department. Our staff covers all of the mental health emergencies that occur at the emergency department at Sacred Heart Hospital, and we also provide coverage in many instances for individuals who have behavioral health concerns who are admitted to the hospital. One of the things that I think I would try to help you understand is that part of what we're trying to do is, with a crisis receiving center, is where possible trying to move behavioral health crises out of the emergency department unless they really have to be there. And we were just dealing with a situation the other day where we had somebody admitted to the ED, maybe looking at medical detox. However, the ICU is full, probably because of COVID. I don't think I really understood why. So I'm I've had a number of meetings with Doug Ekron regarding what our plans are. I believe Avera Sacred Heart is very supportive of this and sees it as a very positive thing for the community.
Thank you for that. And I would just say that I'm excited for the opportunity and being able to partner with Lewis and Clark Behavioral Health on this. It's certainly a worthwhile cause. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I realize we do not have a motion and a second for any of this on the table yet. Is there anybody in the public that would like to say anything to this before I start asking for motions? You can when we get a motion as well, but I just thought I'd ask. We lost a lot of our public. Okay. All right, so we will move on to 2A under new business, which is Resolution 21-99, authorizing the mayor to execute the owner's certificate on a plat of Shirley Bridge Addition Lots 1 and 2. What is your pleasure?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further commission discussion on 2A? Anybody in the public? Al, roll call.
Schramm.
Aye.
Weber.
Aye.
Villanueva.
Aye.
Benson.
Aye.
Brunig.
Abstain. Association, my wife does fantastic work for Lewis and Clark Mental Health.
Johnson.
Aye.
Maibaum.
Aye.
Minor.
Aye.
Mayor Mosher.
Aye, resolution carries. 2B is Resolution 21-100, authorizing the city manager to execute the purchase agreement and all subsequent documents, providing for the transfer of the described 4.77 acres to Yankton Thrive for the purpose of transfer to Lewis and Clark Behavioral Health Services. What is your pleasure?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Ross, anything to clarify here?
If you take a look at the purchase agreement, you'll see that there is a purchase price of blank right now. So now is kind of the time for you guys to discuss if this is going to be a donation, because if it is, that will need to be filled in as a 0. But right now, it's ready for you guys to decide.
Does that have to be a motion to donation?
You have
or
to amend it
can this-
then?
I think you're going to want to add whatever the total is to the motion, so you may want to adjust your motion once you guys have had some discussion on that point.
This would be a question for Dave. Is there language in the purchase agreement that should the unforeseeable future show that no grant money is received for the various parts of construction and Lewis and Clark's not able to proceed with their construction, would the city retain rights to that land?
Yeah, we talked quite a bit about that, and the purchase agreement does have the ability for the city to recover it. And also, I think we're going to work with Dr. Stanich on the timing of the transfer, because if we can have the title company kind of on call, we'll monitor when they actually need to have title to the property, and we'll probably hold that transfer until we absolutely know that we have grant confirmation. So, yeah, we've kind of been thinking about which process is going to work the best. But yes, if the project for whatever reason, and we hope not, doesn't come to fruition, we actually don't want the plat recorded either, probably.
All right, Bridget, I believe you made the original motion. Are you comfortable moving forward with amending your motion to donate the land to Lewis and Clark per the discussion we just had?
Yes, I'll make my motion to donate the land to Lewis and Clark.
And I will second that.
Thank you. All right. Ross, does that cover what we need?
Yep, but I'm going to have you revise that just a little more, Bridget. It's a donation to Yankton Thrive.
Yes, I would like to amend my motion as a donation to Yankton Thrive for the purpose of.
Correct.
Commissioner Weber, did you second? I second the remotion of the motion?
I
Amended,
second the revision
remended.
of the motion.
Okay, so on the table is a motion to approve donating the land to Yankton Thrive. Any further discussion on that? Anybody in the public? Roll call.
Weber.
Aye.
Villanueva.
Aye.
Benson.
Aye.
Brunig.
Abstain?
Johnson.
Aye.
Mybom.
Aye.
Minor.
Aye.
Schramm.
Aye.
Mayor Moser.
Aye, resolution carries. 2C is to authorize the mayor to sign a letter of support for the Lewis and Clark Behavioral Health Services application for a United States Department of Agriculture, USDA Rural Development Loan/Grant. What is your pleasure?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Anybody from the public? Roll call.
Villanueva.
Aye.
Benson.
Aye.
Brunig.
Abstain?
Johnson.
Aye.
Mybom.
Aye.
Minor.
Aye.
Schramm.
Aye.
Weber.
Aye.
Mayor Moser.
Aye, motion carries. Good luck with your project and with your grant application, and we'll be looking forward to celebrating that at its completion. All right, number 3 under new business is introduction of the 2021 assessment roll, which is a first reading of noxious vegetation and tree trimming, consideration of Memorandum 21-242 and Resolution 21-97 recommending that January 24th, 2022 be established as the date for a public hearing on the special assessment roll for noxious vegetation and tree trimming. Can I get an introduction?
Introduced.
We do have it introduced. I understand City Manager Lowen wants to make a comment.
I just want to let the commission know that when the packet was put together, since the packet's been put together, we've had some people pay. So you'll have an updated assessment roll when we have the public hearing.
Thank you for clearing that. New business number 4 is consideration of Memorandum 21-253 and Resolution 21-109 regarding determining land not needed for the Yankton Cemetery intermittent purposes for greater than 20 years. Ross is going to go through the, I'll ask for Ross to walk us through exactly what all of that means before I ask.
Okay, so sometime after the first of the year, probably maybe March, April timeframe, we're going to be taking up the discussion of whether this commission wants to make any other use of that frontage of the cemetery land that abuts Broadway on the western side of the cemetery area. That approximately 8 acres, about 100 years ago, somebody had an idea of drawing grave sites through the entirety from Douglas to Broadway, and they recorded that drawing. So in order to put that property to any other potential use, this board must make a determination that there's no reasonable need for the interment of the dead in that area for a period of at least 20 years. And that's a determination that this board needs to make as an official action before we can really do anything else with it. So it's a formality just for discussion purposes. You guys are not deciding tonight whether you're going to do that. It's just a condition of determining what else you might do with it. Does that make sense? Go team.
Commission discussion. Or questions, I guess I should ask.
Ross, if I read correctly in the memo, Todd Larson's department determined that there was excess of 160 years worth of land available.
Correct. In fact, based on trends, we have reason to believe that it will be longer, but it's hard to determine whether trends will continue. But at least 163 years as it stands now at current sales and burial rates, not including the approximately 8 acres in question here.
I will make the motion that we proceed with the
Second.
determination.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Any other further commission discussion? Anybody in the public? Al, roll call.
Benson.
Aye.
Brunig.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Mybom.
Aye.
Minor.
Aye.
Schramm.
Aye.
Weber.
Aye.
Villanueva.
Aye.
Mayor Moser.
Aye. Motion carries. Number 5 under new business is consideration of Memorandum 21-245 and Resolution 21-98 regarding the purchase of radar units for the police department. This is in the amount of $8,765, of which $6,948 will be coming reimbursed through a grant from the Highway Safety Project, which leaves then a balance of being paid by us at $1,817, of which $7,500 was budgeted for this. What is your pleasure?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any commission discussion? I would just request from Chief Foot, the radars are not used on me. Can we put that in there? Okay. I kid, it's getting late. Okay. Any other discussion from the community? Nobody's going to amend the motion for that. Darn, okay. All right. Seeing no further commission or public discussion, Al, roll call.
Brunig.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Mybom.
Aye.
Minor.
Aye.
Schramm.
Aye.
Weber.
Aye.
Villanueva.
Aye.
Benson.
Aye.
Mayor Moser.
Aye, motion carries. Number 6 under new business is consideration of Memorandum 21-244 and Resolution 21-101 regarding the purchase of 1 patrol vehicle and 1 unmarked vehicle for the police department. This is through Lamb Motors in Oneida, which I know we've discussed before, has the state contract bid. It's for a 2022 Ford Interceptor SUV. Totaling $61,035, and a 2022 Ford F-150 for $54,826. That adds up to $115,861, of which $150,000 was actually budgeted. What is your pleasure?
So moved.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any commission discussion? Anybody in the public? Roll call.
Johnson.
Aye.
Mybom.
Aye.
Minor.
Aye.
Schramm.
Aye.
Weber.
Aye.
Villanueva.
Aye.
Benson.
Aye.
Brunig.
Aye.
Mayor Moser.
Aye, motion carries. Number 7 under new business is consideration of Memorandum 21-254 and Resolution 21-103 regarding speed limit recommendations on 31st Street from about east of Francis Street to 31st and Penina Street intersections, and for Penina Street from 31st Street and Penina Street intersection south, approximately 100 feet north of Valley Road. So the stretch that starts kind of by the Menards back road and goes all the way around out by the airport. This is to take it from 45 miles per hour to 30 miles per hour to development and sight lines. What is your pleasure?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Adam, I might call you forward here. I, for one, am not liking this recommendation. I kind of like tootling around that corner, but I also know lots of development going on there. So maybe you can walk us through exactly why we're making this recommendation.
Yes, so this is with the latest phase of the Ridgeway North development, constructed 29th Street between Douglas and Penina. It finished 29th Street out between Douglas and Penina at Penina. And that is an area that has some sight distance issues with the curves on Penina, 31st and Penina Streets. Really, this is taking engineering standards by the book with sight distances and applying the speed limits that the book says should be applied. And that's what the engineering staff did. Rather than having segments that go from 30 to 45, down to 30, back up to 45, down to 30. We just thought it'd be best to just establish the whole speed limit at 30 miles per hour. As this Ridgeway North development builds out in the area south of 31st, there will be roads that intersect off of that new development as well with 31st. And at that time, I would think we would establish a lower speed limit there as well too. So we just felt this is the appropriate time to drop that speed limit to the appropriate speeds for these intersections.
Yeah, now I see why Chief Hood is getting new radars. Okay. But I do see, on the map provided in our commission packet, especially on that East 29th, where you've connected that to Penina with that house and that sits right there on the corner. It is pretty tricky to see that for somebody that's going to make, if we approve the stop sign here, 2 down, it's going to make it hard for them to see at a faster speed.
We have taken calls from concerned residents about the safety of that intersection with the current speeds, and the intersection is not open yet. We were hoping to have this development on the agenda tonight to be accepted by the commission, but we just had some things to work out with the developer that we just didn't quite make the deadline. So that'll be brought forward in a future agenda. And we also, on this commission agenda, there is a stop sign request for this one too, so that'll be coming up.
Any further commission discussion? Besides, we don't like it, but we understand why.
I should add too, we'll be adding appropriate signage on Penina and 31st, that the advance warning of the intersection so that traveling motorists are aware that they are approaching an intersection. So.
You bring up a good point, Adam. When we introduce speed limit changes like this, and I know we did it on West City Limits Road, I believe, we kind of said, okay, how out there is it to make people aware, and then how, as we work with the police department, as we change this, kind of forgiving are we in working with people on this adjustment? The first part would be for you. How do we mark, what does your department do to really emphasize that speed's going to change?
We'll change the signs out, and we'll put orange flags with those signs for the time being for a while, and take feedback from the police department as to when we feel we can take those down or people become aware that has taken place. So we try to do the best we can to make sure it's signed and people are aware of the signs.
And I would imagine like social media posts and using the City of Yankton site. Chief Foot, cops, the police department's works well with the public, at least initially.
Yeah, we'll do warnings. We'll be out there for us.
Oh.
There's an adjustment period, obviously. There's also a point where we can enforce it.
Absolutely, I agree. For those that didn't hear Chief Foot, not at the microphone, he said there's a small warning period in working with the public, and they'll get the board out there to help folks illustrate needing to slow down if approved.
Mayor Mosher, in the interest of time, considering the next 3 items are going to be kind of all in the same area, is it possible to consolidate these and
I don't think so.
into?
I don't think so.
I don't think so.
Sorry. I'll cruise through them, though. I'll keep my comments to myself. All right, any other commission discussion on the speed limit change? Anybody in the public? Al, roll call.
Mybom.
Aye.
Minor.
Aye.
Schramm.
Aye.
Weber.
Aye.
Villanueva.
Aye.
Benson.
Aye.
Brunig.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Mayor Mosher.
Aye, motion carries. Number 8, under new business, is consideration of Memorandum 21-256 and Resolution 21-107 regarding a stop sign request at 19th and Dakota and 19th and West Street, which is for development out by the high school. What is your pleasure?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any commission discussion on this? Anybody in the public? Roll call.
Minor.
Aye.
Schramm.
Aye.
Weber.
Aye.
Villanueva.
Aye.
Benson.
Aye.
Brunig.
Aye.
Johnson?
Aye.
Mybom?
Aye.
Mayor Moser?
Aye, motion carries. Number 9 under new business is consideration of Memorandum 21-257 and Resolution 21-108 regarding a stop sign request at 29th and Penina, which we just discussed is out by the airport. What is your pleasure?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second, and I know, Adam, just to clarify, because somebody asked me this, the stop sign will be on 29th Street. It will not stop traffic on Penina.
That is correct.
Okay. I just wanted to clarify that I had that question. Any other commission discussion? Anybody in the public? Roll call.
Schramm?
Aye.
Weber?
Aye.
Villanueva?
Aye.
Benson?
Aye.
Brunig?
Aye.
Johnson?
Aye.
Mybom?
Aye.
Minor?
Aye.
Mayor Moser?
Aye, motion carries. Number 10 under new business is consideration of Memorandum 21-255 regarding a change order number 1 and final project acceptance and final payment for the active transportation project, which took place by the Yankton Middle School for a sidewalk located there. This is for a total cost of $121,146.75, which is an additional $5,077.75, mainly due to a 6-foot curb and retaining wall. What is your pleasure?
So moved. Second.
So we have a motion and a second. Any commission discussion on this? Seeing none, Adam, I would say that is really nice. I've drove by the middle school, and to see that there, it looks really nice, and to have that for our kids to make it a safe way to get to school and for folks to get to Memorial Park. So thank you for your department on that. Any comment from the public? Roll call.
Weber?
Aye.
Villanueva?
Aye.
Benson?
Aye.
Brunig?
Aye.
Johnson?
Aye.
Mybom?
Aye.
Minor?
Aye.
Schramm?
Aye.
Mayor Moser?
Aye, motion carries. Number 11 under new business is consideration of Memorandum 21-246, recommending approval of the mayor's appointment to the Park Advisory Board due to a resignation. That appointment is for Nick Severson, who will be appointed until 2024 if approved. What is your pleasure?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any commission discussion?
Can I just ask who resigned?
Yes, you can, but I have to pull it up on a neuron, so.
Well,
Todd, are you still on?
Andy Bryan.
Andy
Or
Bryan.
Joey Bryan. Could be Joey Bryan.
Joey Bryan is correct.
Any other commission discussion? Anybody in the public? Roll call.
Villanueva?
Aye.
Benson?
Aye.
Brunig?
Aye.
Johnson?
Aye.
Mybom?
Aye.
Minor?
Aye.
Schramm?
Aye.
Weber?
Aye.
Mayor Moser?
Aye. Motion carries, and our thanks to Nick for stepping forward to serve on the Parks Advisory Board. Okay, number 12 is consideration of Memorandum 21-258 regarding a closeout and acceptance of a settlement agreement for a gravity sewer main project, and that is our project that was completed in 2020 with S.J. Lewis Construction. What is your pleasure?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any commission discussion on this?
Ross, I don't think this was in the memorandum. Can you remind us what was the liquidated damages, which I assume is part of this?
Yes. I'm going to try to do this from my recollections here. I believe liquidated damages that were held back were about
Kyle remembers.
260, yeah, 268.
That was in dispute. It was in dispute, but that's.
Yeah, and then, yeah, this is the portion that's not in dispute. And we also had about another 100 that was held back as part of the final contingency that was also owing. And then there was, what bridges us to the final number was some disputed change order claims based on unexpected groundwater levels beyond what the technical data showed. Once they dug into the ground, once they started, they found the water table was substantially higher. So this was a compromise of the total number. That just instead of a whole bunch of change orders, it's just one final settlement that closes out the project.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any other commission discussion? Anybody in the public? Roll call.
Benson.
Aye.
Brunig.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Mybom.
Aye.
Minor.
Aye.
Schramm.
Aye.
Weber.
Aye.
Villanueva.
Aye.
Mayor Mosher.
Aye, motion carries. We do not have anything under other business, so I would ask for a motion to adjourn into executive session to discuss contractual litigation and personnel matters under SDCL 1-25-2.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, nay. And anybody abstaining? All right.